Hello and welcome to another edition of the Jim Laird Show, brought to you by Body IO-FM. I'm your host, Jim Laird. Today I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant about one of my big pet peeves, the fitness industry. And I think the fitness industry is one of the main reasons why most Americans just don't even want to try to improve their health and overall fitness. I deal with this constantly at the gym when I have people come in for an assessment orientation. They're almost scared to death because they've usually gone somewhere else, worked out with somebody, and they, after their first workout, they couldn't walk for a week or two, or they've watched The Biggest Loser, or they've seen some sort of celebrity trainer and the stuff that they're doing and some of the diets that they're doing to try and lose weight. And I think it really discourages people from taking care of themselves because they're like, well, what the hell do I even need to bother, And if the average American knew how easy it was to look good and feel good. Now, I'm not talking about, training at a high level or being a professional athlete. The majority of people in this country have no interest in that. Most people just want to play with their kids and they want to feel good and they want to look decent naked. It's really pretty simple. And I'm going to go over, I've got a large number of clientele that I've had since 2001. And I'm going to go through kind of what I've noticed is the keys to success for looking good and feeling good, which you don't really hear about in the fitness industry. All you see in the fitness industry is like, six-pack abs and, bigger deadlift, bigger bench, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But the majority of people in this country don't need that. And we're going to go over lifestyle and diet and all that kind of stuff. So, when people first come to me to talk to me about working out, a lot of the people are frustrated. They've been somewhere else. They're burned out. I get either two extremes. I get people that are basically trashed because they've been burning the candle at both ends, plus trying to train at a high level and they're burned out. Or I get the person that just has just let the wheels come off the wagon and they're at square zero. And the people that are at square zero are usually a little easier to convince to buy into the plan. The people that have burned the candle at both ends are a little more difficult to work with because they've been managing stress with exercise. And when they stop exercising so much mentally, they have a hard time dealing with that. And so we have to kind of work through that. But, when people come in, and we run them through like the first session. It's something really simple. We do some real simple stuff on the floor just to see how they move. And then we might end with, depending on what kind of orthopedic issues they have, like some prowler pushes and some carries just to kind of get them moving. And we explain to them that we're starting slow because one of the things that I think that's overlooked is GPP, is you have to get in shape in order to train. And training is a stress. And if you take someone who's out of shape and you take someone who's basically has no level of preparedness, which is the average American, and you throw them into high intensity, they might get some results for a little while, but most of the time they're going to get frustrated, they're going to get hurt, they're not going to come back, or their body's just not going to adapt very well. It's going to adapt in a positive way. So you want to start out real slow. And honestly, for the first couple of weeks with people that are really out of shape or have a lot of excess body fat, the workouts are maybe 15, 20 minutes. The main work is convincing them to walk daily or do something active daily. It doesn't have to be insane. It could be ultimate frisbee. It could be golf. It could be, anything depending on their activity level. But daily activity is the key. Working out super hard once or twice a week and then sitting on your ass all day is not a good long-term strategy. And then educating them about food. People argue till they're blue in the face about food and about calories and about all that good stuff. But, if we look at traditional cultures, you've got, like the Eskimos who 90% of their diet was fat and protein. And you've got Catawbans, you've got some hunter-gatherer tribes in South America that, are eating more fruits and vegetables. But I think we could all agree that most Americans eat way too much refined starch. I have a coffee shop next door to the gym and I go in there in the morning to get my coffee of my heavy whipping cream, and amazes me the people that are having their latte mocha double shot of whatever, 400 grams of sugar with a bagel with cream cheese. or eating croissants or whatever else, and at every meal they're having a bread product. I mean, it's like that for breakfast, sandwich for lunch, and then for dinner it's, who knows, pizza, whatever. And or they're eating like yogurt and carrot sticks and celery all the time, and they're not eating any real food. Even if, if you make the argument that some of these hunter-gatherer tribes have a higher carbohydrate consumption than they did, those carbohydrates they're eating are nothing like the carbohydrates that are available today. Even if you ate fruits and vegetables today are nothing like the fruits and vegetables in the wild or 100 and 150 years ago, because they've bred the apples and the potatoes and all these things to be bigger and sweeter and tastier than they have been in the past. I spend a lot of time in the woods, and I eat a lot of wild berries and the odd, you come across the odd apple tree in the forest and stuff like that. They don't taste anything like the fruit, the strawberries that you get in the store. They're kind of tart, they're kind of bitter. So if you go back in time and look at these traditional cultures, like a straight sugar source like honey is not something that's going to come along very often. So getting people to understand that they need to drastically reduce their refined carbohydrate consumption, that doesn't mean that they don't eat any carbs, but at the very least, if they're going to eat some refined carbs, don't eat them at every meal. Eat them at night. That's one of the reasons I like Carb Night so much, is because it's simple. Getting a protein and fat source in first thing in the morning, eating protein and fat, helping to reduce your appetite. And if you're eating starch at every single meal, especially refined starches, not vegetables, it's going to be hard for you to stop eating. You're going to turn into a human vacuum cleaner. But if you start eating fats and proteins and vegetables, your appetite's going to auto-regulate itself. And even with athletes, Fred Hatfield talked about this on one of Rob Wolf's podcasts. He said, the way he does his eating, or did his eating, was on the days he trained really hard, he ate more, and the days he didn't train so hard, he ate less. And Charles Poliquin always talks about how you need to earn your carbohydrates, and I really agree with Charles on that point. We've overcomplicated nutrition and getting people to understand that if they don't have metabolic flexibility, in my opinion, like if you can't skip a couple meals without feeling like you're going to eat your arm or you start sweating, because your blood sugar drops, that's not a good thing. You should be able to go a couple meals without eating, because a couple hundred years ago, you can't go to the fridge and just get whatever you want, or you might not eat for a day or two, and our bodies are designed to be able to handle that. And so if you can't handle skipping a meal or two, you might want to work on your metabolic flexibility a little bit. So getting people to eat, and then getting people to be mindful and to slow down and to actually deal with themselves, because let's face it, most people are dealing with stress in their life with one, they could, and some things are more positive than others. You could deal with your stress through your job. Like, you don't like yourself, so you work your ass off in your job to try and get some self-worth, or some people will feed their face, to make themselves feel better, or they'll drink, or they'll gamble, or they'll watch porn, or they'll have sex, or whatever. And there's some things society is like, if people are addicted to exercise and using that to basically make them feel better about themselves, people are like, oh, that's awesome. Even though you got shin splints and your back hurts and you've had, several knee surgeries and your neck hurts and your shoulder hurts, but, just keep training hard. And that's totally fine if you choose to do that. But getting people to be aware of what they're doing and what they're eating, and so they don't become a human vacuum cleaner. And Rob Wolf is actually coming out with a book on the neuroregulation of appetite. If you're eating these refined carbs all the time, it's going to mess with your body's ability to regulate your appetite, which is why a lot of people can't stop eating. And then also making sure that your food is high in nutrition, has high level of nutritional density, so that your body gets what it needs, so it will actually, okay, I'm full. Instead of, most people that are obese, if you test them, you test their vitamin and nutrient levels, they're non-existent, but they have an excess of calories, but they aren't getting any nutrition. So that's very important, as well as attacking the lifestyle part of it, the walking, the meditation, the mindfulness part. That is what I put most of my stress on. And then in the beginning, what we work on is developing work capacity, getting them moving around in a way that their heart rate isn't racing through the ceiling, to build that capacity so they can handle harder training. And then focusing on mastering basics, mastering a basic squat, a basic hinge. Not everybody's going to be able to deadlift. Maybe we deadlift them off a block, we deadlift them with a kettlebell. Somebody who's really incapable, maybe a wall sit, mastering being able to stand on one foot, basic stuff like that. Controlling the core, being able to control your middle, carries and pushes and single arm overhead stuff. And it doesn't necessarily have to be with a barbell. It could be with a landmine. It could be with a dumbbell. It can be like a pullover. But getting people to learn how to use their core, getting people to be able to do like a single leg hinge and then eventually single leg work, and building this base in the sagittal plane until you introduce more complicated training. And that's going to take time. And most people, even athletes that I work with, they haven't mastered the fundamentals. And if you have an athlete that has not mastered the fundamentals, if you do the fundamentals with them, they are going to do extremely well and they're going to improve. But guess what? That basics don't sell. Like if you have a product and it's about pushing the prowler, doing a carry and a bear crawl, people aren't going to buy that because it's not fancy. People want fancy, and fancy doesn't necessarily work. You have to establish a baseline of preparedness, and then you have to hammer the basics. And then once you have the basics down, then you can kind of work on doing some flashy stuff from time to time. The people that I've had for the longest have trained twice a week with weights and maybe finish with a little bit of conditioning, short 5-minute deal. And they walk every day, they're active, and they eat real food. And they focus on getting their sleep. They make that kind of stuff a priority. And they've done phenomenally well. My 90-year-old client works out with me. I've put some stuff about him on Facebook here recently. Twice a week for 30 minutes, super simple stuff. Get on the floor, we're pushing things, we're dragging things, we're, making him get up off the ground, and stand up and get back down, get off the ground. It's not super complicated, but he's been consistent. That's the thing. Is the exercise that you're going to give somebody something they can do for the rest of their life when they have a busy schedule, when they've got all these other things going on? Signing them up for 5 days a week is not going to be sustainable. Now, if you got somebody who's got like a goal where they have to perform and, they're getting ready for a movie or, there's exceptions to that. But the vast majority of people, if they just lifted weights twice a week and lifted within their ability and they left the gym knowing they could have done a little bit more, and they challenge themselves a little bit once they build a little bit of a base and they eat real food and they walk, that's really all there is to it. And if more people understood that, like I can't tell you how many people I've worked with like a month or two in and they've dropped sizes or they've dropped weight and they're like, gosh, this is so easy. I mean, I can eat decent food and I'm not killing myself in the gym and I go for a walk every day. If I knew this was so simple, I would have done it years ago. And that's the sad thing about it is most people don't understand how easy this is for the vast majority of people to get an improvement. It does not take that much, and it's not that complicated. But, the media makes it complicated, and, the internet makes it complicated because there's so much information out there. People just get overwhelmed, and then they see, people getting beat to death on The Biggest Loser, and yes, they lose weight, but guess what? 3 years later, they're 100 pounds more than when they started. So that's basically the bottom line. The gist of it is keep things simple. Do something that's sustainable for you for the rest of your life. And then once you have a foundation, if you want to compete in a powerlifting meet or if you want to, run a 5K or you want to do that sort of thing, that's perfectly fine. But if your goal is just to look good and feel good, there's no need to do anything extraordinary or crazy or extreme. It's just basic fundamental stuff. Challenge yourself. And if you do that consistently over a long period of time and you pick something that you can do consistently for a long period of time, in the long run, you are going to come out way ahead of the game. So there's my little rant. I know it's short and sweet, but sometimes that's good. I've got some really cool stuff coming up here soon. I actually got my brain mapped. I know Tim Rogers was on my show a couple episodes ago and talking about neurofeedback. I've had some pretty significant head traumas in my past, especially in college football. And then my childhood was not what we'd say pleasant. I have a super good relationship with my parents finally right now after years of work. So I don't want to get into details about that, but I had a very uncomfortable upbringing, and that has affected my ability to use my brain. They did find a brain, which is very positive and encouraging. But I'm going to have Tim Rogers and Ginny on. Ginny, I can't remember Ginny's last name off the top of my Sloan, I think it is. I think we're going to have them on, and we're going to talk about the questionnaire I took and some of the things that I struggle with, and I start my neurofeedback stuff this week. So by the time this comes out, I'll be working on that. So I'm going to talk about a lot of the stuff that I struggle with, because it's pretty interesting, because, I went through and talked with Ginny about some of the things I struggle with in my life, and organization and planning and things like that. And because of what I've got going on in my noggin, I'm going to struggle with those things. She's like, it doesn't matter how hard you try to fix this stuff, it's just not going to work until you make your brain work a little more efficiently. It's kind of like the body. It doesn't matter how hard you try and squat right or deadlift right. If your core isn't working right and you don't know how to activate it, you're not going to be able to do the movement. Your body's just going to cheat your way through it. It's kind of the same thing with the brain. If your brain isn't working efficiently, or if it's stuck in a certain pattern, you're not going to be able to do these things as well. So it's going to be, I'm really excited about giving this a shot and seeing how it affects my my day-to-day ability to, run a business and all that sort of stuff. And I've been very successful at it, but there's a lot of things in the business on the admin side that I have just absolutely struggled with. And a lot of it is due to this pattern that I'm stuck in. So it's going to be kind of cool to see that. And I'm kind of excited to share the results of that with you. So hopefully some of you that are struggling with certain things might explore that as an option. I know I've had a couple people reach out to me about the Tim Rogers show, about talking about head trauma and stuff, that have reached out to me and said, hey, I went and got help, and man, it's saved my marriage, or it's made a huge difference in my sleep or my job. And that's really cool. That's the reason I do this. I do this to try and get information out there and make people think, and get people to try different things, and see if they can, approach things from maybe a different angle that they haven't thought of before. So that's coming up here very soon. I'm excited about that. Float tank at the gym is going really well. I'm actually recording this while someone's floating, and that's been very positive for me to get in there. It's kind of weird. I've discovered that I can't float before I train people, because it relaxes me so much that when I get out of the tank and go to train people, I get anxiety. So I have to float after work or sleep in it at night, but I can't float. So if you're thinking about trying to float and you want to try it, make sure you don't do it like on a day you have like a big presentation or something, because you need kind of a transition time because to go from one extreme to the other. So if you have to go from like being stupid relaxed to like being alert and really functional, you might need a couple hours or a day to kind of, so you want to float either after you've done something very strenuous, especially if it's the first time. Once you kind of learn how to react to it, you'll be able to go. But if you're going to float for the first time, I would suggest that you do it at a time where you have plenty of transition time. Just don't do it like before a major board meeting presentation or something like that, and you might not handle it quite as well as you normally would, because it's such an extreme. It's hard to explain unless you've done it. It's such an extreme chill out that it's kind of a little bit of a shock at first, because most people haven't experienced that kind of relaxation ever in their life. So that's going well. So I'm excited to keep you updated on that. And the gym overall is doing very well. We're busy as always. We've got, athletes coming in and out of season, and we've got, we pick up new people all the time, and we've got our current clientele that continues to train with us, and we're very grateful for that. And so very excited about that. And if you guys have any suggestions for, guests that you'd like me to interview, or any more feedback, I've really appreciated the feedback I've got about the show. And I want to do my best to try and give you guys some great content. So thanks again for listening. And once again, please support Kiefer so I can continue to do the show. I'm very grateful for him allowing me to do this show on his channel. So until we speak again, have a great night or day.